hope you're doing well. My name's Matthew and I post videos every Monday and Friday. So if you love the tingles, then do hit that subscribe button because you are in the right place. Now before we get into today's video, if there's any other cases that you'd like me to cover, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comments below. I love doing your guys' suggestions and I'm learning so much from you guys, so yeah, any suggestions always greatly appreciated. But welcome to tonight's true crime ASMR session. Tonight we'll be exploring the disturbing and tragic case of Juana Barraza, also known as the Little Old Lady Killer. But before we begin, I invite you to find a comfortable place, perhaps with a cozy blanket, or a warm drink, or a glass of wine, or a beer. Allow yourself to fully relax. Let the soothing sound of my voice guide you through this dark chapter in history, and remember, you are safe here. You are safe here. You are safe here, and far away from the horrors we will discuss tonight. Juana Barraza was born on December 27th, 1957, in a rural town in Mexico. Her early life was one of hardship and poverty and unimaginable suffering. Juana's mother was a single parent, struggling to provide for her children. She was also an alcoholic and often neglectful and sometimes cruel. The bond between mother and daughter was fractured from the very start. Juana's father abandoned the family when she was just 3 months old, leaving her mother to fend for the children alone. Life was harsh, and Juana, like many other children in such circumstances, had to grow up far too quickly. But her mother's neglect soon took a darker turn. When Juana was just 12 years old, her mother did something unthinkable. She sold her daughter to a man named Jose Lugo in exchange for 3 beers. Not 1, not 2, but 3 beers. Jose was a man without morals or compassion. For 4 long years, he subjected Juana to repeated sexual abuse, a trauma that would leave deep, festering wounds in her psyche. This betrayal, this abandonment by the very person who was supposed to protect her, would soon shape the woman that Juana would become. Juana eventually escaped Jose's grasp, but the damage was done. During those 4 years, she bore 4 children from these abusive years, though 2 of them died young. Her deep-seated hatred for her mother and for those who reminded her of that betrayal simmered within her, waiting for the day it would boil over. The late 1990s and early 2000s were a time of fear for the elderly women of Mexico City. They were falling victim to a mysterious assailant, a killer who targeted them with merciless precision. These women, often living alone, were found strangled in their homes, their lives extinguished by a force they never saw coming. Juana, by day, was a familiar figure in her neighborhood. She was known for her love of lucha libre. I think I pronounced that wrong. The popular Mexican wrestling sport, where she performed under the name La Dama del Silencio, the Lady of Silence. Her wrestling persona was one of strength, power, and silence, a reflection perhaps on the life she had led, full of pain that was never spoken of, only acted upon. But when the sun set, Juana became something far more sinister. She would roam the streets of Mexico City, targeting elderly women who lived alone. Her method was both cunning and ruthless. She would pose as a social worker, a nurse, or a government official, offering assistance or simply asking for entry under some pretense of kindness. The elderly, trusting and often lonely, would let her in. Once inside, Juana would strike. She would use items like stethoscopes, telephone cords, or even the scarves of her victims to strangle them. The scenes she left behind were horrifying. Bodies crumpled in their own homes, the life choked out of them in a place where they should have felt the safest. The randomness of these attacks made them even more terrifying. Juana didn't discriminate much beyond the age of her victims. They were all women, all elderly, and all vulnerable. It was as if she was avenging her childhood, punishing the mother figure who failed her by taking the lives of those who reminded her of that betrayal. For years, the police were baffled by these crimes. The idea of a female serial killer was so foreign that they initially focused their investigation on male suspects. Sketches were drawn, suspects were questioned, and yet the murders continued. The press was all over these killings, and the entire city was gripped by fear. But then on January 25th, 2006, everything changed. That day, Juana made a fatal mistake. After killing 82-year-old Ana Maria de los Reyes, she was spotted by a neighbour as she fled the scene of the crime. The neighbour, sensing something was wrong, quickly alerted the authorities. The police were already on high alert and responded immediately and arrested Juana as she attempted to escape. When they searched her belongings, the evidence was undeniable. She was found with a stethoscope, a pension form from one of her victims, and a list of elderly women's addresses. The police were stunned to discover that the person behind these brutal murders was not a man, as he had long believed, but a woman, a mother, a neighbour, and a former wrestler. The arrest sent shockwaves through the community. How could someone who seemed so ordinary, so unassuming, be responsible for such heinous acts? But as Juana sat in the police station, her cold, indifferent expression told the truth. There was no remorse. There was no regret. Only a deep, unresolved anger that she had finally found its outlet. Juana's trial was one of the most sensational in Mexico's history. The courtroom was packed with reporters. The public was eager for every detail of a woman who had terrorized the city. Juana herself remained largely silent throughout the proceedings, her demeanour calm, almost detached as the evidence against her mounted. She confessed to 4 murders, though it's widely believed that she may have been responsible for up to 50 deaths. Juana claimed that her actions were driven by her traumatic past, particularly the abuse she suffered at the hands of her mother. And in her mind, these elderly women were stand-ins for her mother, and by killing them, she was exacting a twisted form of revenge. In 2008, Juana was sentenced to 759 years in prison, a sentence that would ensure she would never walk free again. The judge's decision brought some closure to the families of the victims, but the scars left by her actions are deep and lasting. For many, the question remained, was Juana born a monster? Or was she made into one by the horrors she endured as a child? Now, this is something that's come up in all of our cases. It's that whole nature or nurture argument. Are people born this way, or are they created? I'd like to think that no one's born evil. There probably may be one or two cases where that probably may be the case, but I do think there's a lot to be said by the nurture side of the argument, and she did have a very tough upbringing. Again, not reasoning for the murders, but she was clearly messed up, and I'm sure her past was clearly traumatic. So it would mess you up. I can see that. I mean, I think we all can, can't we? I think we can understand that, but I don't think any of us can really understand why this would then lead to murder of so many innocent people. And what I also don't get is she admitted to 4 murders, but it's possibly 50. Why not just, if you're admitting to 4, why do you just admit to everything? Especially for a 759-year sentence, like, you know you're never coming out, so you might as well just say, right? No. I don't know, guys. Baffled. The story of Juana Barraza is a tragic and haunting reminder of how deeply childhood trauma can affect a person's life. Her actions were monstrous, but they were rooted in a lifetime of pain and suffering. It's a case that forces us to consider the complex interplay between nature and nurture, which I just said, and in the ways in which our past can shape our future. Thank you for joining me tonight as we explored this dark and unsettling tale. I hope the soothing sounds and gentle storytelling have provided you with some comfort and relaxation, even as we delved into such a grim subject. Until next time, take care of yourself and remember to stay safe. Sweet dreams, everybody.